harmony with nature. Networks of marine protected areas combined with nature-based solutions can sustain our needs and livelihoods while rebuilding a mindful, sustainable and equitable relationship with our shared ocean. Acting as one global community, we can harness knowledge to build tools that protect, restore and manage marine and coastal ecosystems. In the ocean we want, marine ecosystems are cherished and understood, keeping our ocean healthy and resilient. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade Challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge number 3. Sustainably feed the global population. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? The ocean has nourished us for thousands of years, fueling and strengthening our communities while underpinning human health and development. Yet growing populations, along with greater awareness of the harmful impacts of land-based meat sources, have driven the demand for ocean-based alternatives. This has led to bigger and unsustainable fishing, trawling and dredging the ocean floor, disturbances in the ocean food web, and disappearing fish species. Is there time to restore ocean seafood resources? Yes. The Ocean Decade allows scientists, governments, and industry to explore and implement innovative solutions that reduce pressure on marine ecosystems by restoring and managing fish stocks, improving aquaculture, and harvesting sustainable seafood. Consuming sustainable seafood is an easy way to join the Ocean Decade. Together, we can support communities relying on seafood resources for their livelihoods while multiplying the seafood the ocean supplies. In the ocean we want, we protect crucial ocean habitats and harvest seafood mindfully so we can always rely on the ocean to feed the global population. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade Challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge number 4. Develop a sustainable and equitable ocean economy. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? The ocean provides livelihoods and nourishment for hundreds of millions of the world's poorest people. The global economy depends on the ocean through fisheries, energy, tourism, and transport. The way we manage and share the ocean's limited resources has a global impact on coastal communities, indigenous peoples, and marine ecosystems. Let's seize the Ocean Decade to unlock transformative ocean science solutions that connect people with the ocean in a productive cycle. Investing in ocean science and technological innovations will create employment opportunities around the world and multiply sixfold the amount of seafood available. A clean, healthy ocean also impacts tomorrow's renewable energy sources, minerals, and medical breakthroughs. Over the next 10 years, Blue Knowledge will give us the tools to use and manage our marine resources for a healthy and productive ocean, for the well-being of humankind and the planet. In the ocean we want, both society and planet benefit from an equitable and sustainable ocean economy, so no one is left behind. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade Challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge number 5. Unlock ocean-based solutions to climate change. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? The ocean is our greatest ally against climate change. It absorbs heat and carbon in the atmosphere. Mangroves and coral reefs protect communities against climate change effects. Ocean-based energy reduces harmful greenhouse gas emissions. But our ocean is unhealthy, with rising temperatures and sea levels, acidic waters, shrinking glaciers, disappearing ecosystems and species, intense weather events, and fish populations shifting toward cooler waters. This leaves our planet and humanity at great risk. Time is ticking. Life and livelihoods in many small island states are already suffering. Ocean science helps us understand ocean-climate interactions with data and knowledge to predict and respond to changes. Together, let's harness the ocean decade for ocean-based solutions to help mitigate, adapt, and build resilience to climate change, like making smarter investments in technologies that lower greenhouse gas emissions. From mountain to seashore, from small island communities to the largest cities. In the ocean we want, our ocean protects us and makes us resilient to climate change. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade Challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge number 6. Increase community resilience to ocean hazards. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? Rising sea levels, harmful algae blooms, and more frequent destructive storms are putting the lives and livelihoods of coastal communities around the world in jeopardy. As threats increase, experts and authorities must have the knowledge to issue warnings, and communities must have the skills and information to respond effectively. The Ocean Decade will foster investment in more effective forecast and early warning systems so we can reduce risks and save lives on land and at sea. From global early warning systems to coastal cities and communities ready to face tsunamis, storm surges, and rising sea levels, to coastal and marine ecosystems that are protected and can offer nature-based solutions to protect communities and infrastructure. Let's harness ocean knowledge to empower individuals and prepare communities so they are ready to face natural ocean hazards. In the ocean we want, people and communities are safe and resilient because we can reduce and respond to the hazards of a dynamic ocean. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade Challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge number 7. Expand the global ocean observing system. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? We're all connected through one shared ocean, from the coast to the high seas, from the ocean's surface to its depths. Sharing information and technology keeps us safe, our economies productive, and our ocean healthy. Through ocean observing systems, scientists, experts, and governments share observations for climate, operational services, and marine ecosystem health. But the current system has gaps and lacks institutional and financial support. Let's seize the Ocean Decade as a chance to amplify this system's impact, making it sustainable and capable of delivering critical information to those who need it. Together we can expand the knowledge of our past, current, and future ocean, leaving no country behind. A truly inclusive and integrated observing system can predict climate, forecast weather, monitor and manage ocean health, and offer real-time services for sustainable development. In the ocean we want, our global ocean observing system tells us about the state of our ocean, so we can respond to changing conditions wherever we are. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade Challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge number 8. Create a digital representation of the ocean. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? First, we must fully explore today's ocean. Its countless challenges and endless possibilities. Sometimes this means understanding the past, and sometimes this means projecting the future. Today, we know more about the moon than we do the ocean. But we have a unique opportunity to change this. Working with some of the best minds in ocean science, the Ocean Decade fosters partnerships to explore and fully map the ocean, creating a digital atlas of our planet's crown jewel, from surface to depths, from biodiversity to cultural and social values, from shorelines to open spaces. This knowledge will support dynamic and sustainable ocean management in a constantly changing ocean. Let's find new ways to see our past, current and future ocean through open data and freely shared information. Together, let's create an accessible ocean for present and future generations. In the ocean we want, we know everything about the ocean so that we may better protect and sustainably manage our planet's blue wealth. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade Challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge 9. Deliver skills, knowledge and technology to all. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? The answer is we don't. Unless we have the necessary skills, knowledge and technology readily available to every expert and citizen alike. If we are to reverse our planetary crisis together, everyone needs access to ocean information and the skills to turn that knowledge into sustainable solutions and action. Whether you work in science, government, business, civil society, or are a citizen committed to protecting the ocean, you can play a part in this open ocean knowledge revolution. The Ocean Decade encourages the exchange and sharing of skills, knowledge and technology to cultivate health responses that can collectively promote a clean, safe and accessible ocean for present and future generations. Let's use the Ocean Decade to build bridges between disciplines and across geographical and generational divides, to radically open access to data, technology and skills, and achieve together the ocean we want by 2030. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade Challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge number 10. Change humanity's relationship with the ocean. How do we go from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? Let's start with a bit of imagination. Imagine an ocean that we no longer take for granted. An ocean that we respect for regulating our climate and inspiring hundreds of cultures around the world. Imagine the power of a whole generation of all ages and walks of life, committed to saving our planet's largest ecosystem. Ocean knowledge gives us a clear picture of the worsening human impacts on the ocean. Education and ocean literacy give us the keys to changing our behavior so that we can protect the ocean. Time for change is running out, but the next 10 years of ocean action will be critical for a step change in our relation with the ocean. The Ocean Decade is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for humanity to reconnect with the ocean, understand its importance to our survival, and use that knowledge to transform our relationship. In the ocean we want, we live respectfully with our shared ocean, carefully and sustainably managing its precious resources. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade challenge? Join us today. Ocean Decade Challenge number 1. Understand and beat marine pollution. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? Today, we see plastic waste everywhere, from the ocean depths to the remotest islands of the Pacific. Yet the ocean is also menaced by pollution we cannot see. Untreated sewage, pesticides and fertilizers, toxic chemicals, heavy metals and other harmful substances. They're not just a threat to marine life, but also to human health and livelihoods. The Ocean Decade is an opportunity to identify, map, and reduce these sources of pollution. Working hand in hand, scientists, businesses, governments, and many other groups can create and roll out solutions that eliminate pollution at the source, reduce its impacts, and deliver a clean ocean for us all. And as consumers, we all have an important role to play over the next 10 years to beat marine pollution. In the ocean we want, we embrace habits of buying and consuming that help keep our ocean clean and healthy. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge number 2. Protect and restore ecosystems and biodiversity. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? Until recently, marine ecosystems were largely untouched and teeming with rich biodiversity. Yet something has changed over the last 50 years. Coral reefs, top ocean predators, and some of our last pristine marine ecosystems are vanishing. How much more damage must occur before we take action? Healthy marine ecosystems protect our coastlines from storms and erosion, providing safe habitats for millions of species key to nature's equilibrium, offering food security to billions of people and shielding against climate change. The Ocean Decade fosters an understanding of the challenges facing our ocean so we can live in harmony with nature. Networks of marine protected areas combined with nature-based solutions can sustain our needs and livelihoods while rebuilding a mindful, sustainable and equitable relationship with our shared ocean. Acting as one global community, we can harness knowledge to build tools that protect, restore and manage marine and coastal ecosystems. In the ocean we want, marine ecosystems are cherished and understood, keeping our ocean healthy and resilient. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge number 3. Sustainably feed the global population. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? The ocean has nourished us for thousands of years, fueling and strengthening our communities while underpinning human health and development. Yet growing populations, along with greater awareness of the harmful impacts of land-based meat sources, have driven the demand for ocean-based alternatives. This has led to bigger and unsustainable fishing, trawling and dredging the ocean floor, disturbances in the ocean food web, and disappearing fish species. Is there time to restore ocean seafood resources? Yes, The Ocean Decade allows scientists, governments and industry to explore and implement innovative solutions that reduce pressure on marine ecosystems by restoring and managing fish stocks, improving aquaculture, and harvesting sustainable seafood. Consuming sustainable seafood is an easy way to join the Ocean Decade. Together, we can support communities relying on seafood resources for their livelihoods while multiplying the seafood the ocean supplies. In the ocean we want, we protect crucial ocean habitats and harvest seafood mindfully so we can always rely on the ocean to feed the global population. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade Challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge number 4. Develop a sustainable and equitable ocean economy. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? The ocean provides livelihoods and nourishment for hundreds of millions of the world's poorest people. The global economy depends on the ocean through fisheries, energy, tourism, and transport. The way we manage and share the ocean's limited resources has a global impact on coastal communities, indigenous peoples, and marine ecosystems. Let's seize the Ocean Decade to unlock transformative ocean science solutions that connect people with the ocean in a productive cycle. Investing in ocean science and technological innovations will create employment opportunities around the world and multiply sixfold the amount of seafood available. A clean, healthy ocean also impacts tomorrow's renewable energy sources, minerals, and medical breakthroughs. Over the next 10 years, Blue Knowledge will give us the tools to use and manage our marine resources for a healthy and productive ocean, for the well-being of humankind and the planet. In the ocean we want, both society and planet benefit from an equitable and sustainable ocean economy, so no one is left behind. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade Challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge number 5. Unlock ocean-based solutions to climate change. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? The ocean is our greatest ally against climate change. It absorbs heat and carbon in the atmosphere. Mangroves and coral reefs protect communities against climate change effects. Ocean-based energy reduces harmful greenhouse gas emissions. But our ocean is unhealthy, with rising temperatures and sea levels, acidic waters, shrinking glaciers, disappearing ecosystems and species, intense weather events, and fish populations shifting toward cooler waters. This leaves our planet and humanity at great risk. Time is ticking. Life and livelihoods in many small island states are already suffering. Ocean science helps us understand ocean climate interactions with data and knowledge to predict and respond to changes. Together, let's harness the Ocean Decade for ocean-based solutions to help mitigate, adapt, and build resilience to climate change, like making smarter investments in technologies that lower greenhouse gas emissions. From mountain to seashore, from small island communities to the largest cities. In the ocean we want, our ocean protects us and makes us resilient to climate change. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade Challenge? Join us today.
Ocean Decade Challenge number 6. Increase community resilience to ocean hazards. How do we move from the ocean we have to the ocean we want? Rising sea levels, harmful algae blooms, and more frequent destructive storms are putting the lives and livelihoods of coastal communities around the world in jeopardy. As threats increase, experts and authorities must have the knowledge to issue warnings, and communities must have the skills and information to respond effectively. The Ocean Decade will foster investment in more effective forecast and early warning systems so we can reduce risks and save lives on land and at sea. From global early warning systems to coastal cities and communities ready to face tsunamis, storm surges, and rising sea levels, to coastal and marine ecosystems that are protected and can offer nature-based solutions to protect communities and infrastructure. Let's harness ocean knowledge to empower individuals and prepare communities so they are ready to face natural ocean hazards. In the ocean we want, people and communities are safe and resilient because we can reduce and respond to the hazards of a dynamic ocean. Are you up to meeting this Ocean Decade Challenge? Join us today.
Good afternoon from Berlin, and a very warm welcome to the 7th Ocean Decade Laboratory, A Productive Ocean, and its wrap-up, of course. Now, this laboratory, like the previous ones, is hosted by the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research in partnership with the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, in short, IOC-UNESCO. My name is Monica Jones, and I'm very, very happy and excited, actually, to be your host for this very special wrap-up. Special because it's not only the wrap-up of this 7th Ocean Decade Laboratory, but actually the conclusion of the entire laboratory series. But first things first, as you know, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed 2021 to 2030 as the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, in short, the Ocean Decade. And the aim is to bring together scientists and stakeholders in order to restore our planet's largest ecosystem, and that, of course, is the ocean, and to pave the way for a sustainable development. Now, the first International Ocean Decade Conference was kicked off here in Berlin last year, and it has since been followed by well, we can now even say 7 ocean decade laboratories, each focusing on one specific ocean decade outcome, this one now focusing on a productive ocean. And before we start to review the activities of the last 48 hours, let me just briefly bring you up to speed with the functions of our Ocean Decade Conference platform, because there is a lot to do there. For one, you need to be in the live stream to follow the event, and you can follow the event in several languages, English, Spanish, French, or English with subtitles. We do have the chat available also for the wrap-up, because you can still engage with one another. And of course, the communication tool Slido is there. You can review the result of the word cloud that you have created during the core event. Now, when we look below the live stream, you see day 1, day 2, day 3. So that was the program of the last 48 hours with lots of information about the different sessions, which you can review, or just look at day 3, the wrap-up, which is taking place right now. And during the wrap-up, you can also go below to that little button that says Live Help Desk. In case you run into technical problems, our support team will be available for you there. Now, when we turn to the left-hand column, you find a lot of interesting buttons. First and foremost, of course, the lounge, where you can review all the decade laboratories that have already taken place. And if you want to know more about the speakers of this event, then the Speakers Corner is the place to go, where you find all the biographies. And right below, you find the button of the satellite activities. Now, 12 have already taken place. 1 more will take place after this wrap-out, and there's all the information there. Talking of information, there's plenty of it in the Ocean Library, documents, photos, which you can download, share, as long as you credit the author. And the Showcases button in this laboratory is also very, very interesting, because during the core event, if you remember, if you participated, we presented 5 showcases, great examples of a productive ocean, and you find much more information about those when you click onto this button. Or you simply stay with us now for this wrap-up, and maybe you want to tweet about it, which would be wonderful. If you do so, we would appreciate if you used the hashtag Ocean Decade. And if you're watching us on YouTube, that is fantastic. Of course, you're very, very welcome. But if you do want to engage with other participants, for example, you would have to register on the conference website. But the good thing is you can still do that. And the website is oceandecade-conference.com. So, I think it's time to bring in the 2 people who are basically responsible for this particular Ocean Decade Laboratory, namely its chairs. So very good to have you with us again, Dr. Anna Jöborn, the CEO at the Swedish Foundation for Strategic Environmental Research, and Professor Reinhold Hahnel, head of the Thünen Institute of Fisheries Ecology in Bremerhaven in the north of Germany. Yeah, well, 48 busy hours, I would say. I mean, you look fresh, but it was a busy time, and I'm sure a lot for you to sort of also digest. So what stayed with you, Anna?
Actually, I would like to start to thank all of you that organized these events, and also the participants. I was really inspired by looking at them, and I must say, we are representing people taking responsibility, and we are at the table, and the organizers, they really invited people from the industry, from indigenous groups, and also from policymakers and science. So I think it's a really inspiring example to bring with us.
Fantastic. Reinhold,
Yes, it was a great diversity of issues. It reflected very well what we also discussed in the core event. So we saw where the problems are, but also where the first solutions are for better use of the ocean.
Okay, well, it's always good to know what's wrong in order to then get the solution, obviously, one step at a time. And when you talk about diversity, I mean, this is a global event, even though we're in a studio in Berlin right now. And let's take a look at the kind of participation from the different parts of the world, because I think we do have some statistics there to show us where people were joining us from and how it's been spread. And I mean, I've seen quite a lot of these charts now over the past 12 months. And I think this is remarkably evenly spread. I mean, Europe usually stands out, but high participation in North America, in Asia, in South America, and also Africa, plus Oceania and the Caribbean there, really present. What do you make of that?
Well, I think a productive ocean is really important also for people from developing countries. I mean, all the topics are of high relevance, but people make their living in many parts of the world, especially in developing countries. You should not forget that more than 90% of the aquaculture production in the world comes from Asia. And therefore, the picture is a little bit biased towards Europe, as you say. But I'm glad we had, and we still have, the participation from all the continents, because it shows that we need this cooperation also on a geographical basis to get forward.
And of course, the representative groups, I just look there. I mean, obviously, research and science is coming out on top. I mean, that's a given, I think, with this kind of conference. But business and industry, 13%, that's quite an impressive percentage. And given the conversations that we had, the sessions, the role that industry and business plays, I think it's fantastic to see that. What really strikes me, though, is early career ocean professionals, also with a high percentage, and arts and culture. That just shows the breadth, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really inspiring that art is also part of this decade, and it's a storytelling decade. So I think art is going to transfer the message really clear.
That's very, very nice, the storytelling decade.
Yes, it's encouraging because it shows that we are at the beginning of the decade, and seeing that so many different groups and stakeholder groups are actually participating means a lot, because it means that this can be really the start of a dialogue between the different stakeholder groups, and I think this is what we actually need.
Yeah. I mean, storytelling, I have to take that right away into the transition, because we're not telling you stories. Obviously, we share facts and figures with you. But in this storytelling narrative, the Ocean Decade Laboratory, A Productive Ocean, started, like the previous ones, of course, with what we called the core event. A lot happened there. Before we talk about it, again, we've prepared some highlights for you. So let's take a look at that.
Representing the governments, representing the communities, and representing the enterprises, people will not have equitable access.
I would say tourism does not manage itself. The one area of solution would be regulation. It's about us going to the local communities and helping the people see the value, extract the value, and distribute it equitably in their own communities.
Especially for the poor and vulnerable, aquatic foods are essential as a part of a sufficient, nutritious diet, and we do need to secure the right to food.
For me, productive ocean is harmonization of economic growth that everybody is looking for, but at the same time, sustainability. There are so many stakeholders in the sea, and they all want a piece of the ocean, but we should just realize that there are limited resources and we have limited space. And that answers also the question why we need to cooperate, because there are no borders in the ocean for fish. So in that step, ecosystem-based management is key for productive oceans.
We need to use the treasures of the oceans in a wise way and not forget that it is a common resource.
I think the secret ingredients to take action is to take action. Don't wait until we have more knowledge, until we have more data, until we have more science being done. Take what we have already and be aware of the uncertainties.
We talk about creating or gathering the science we want for the ocean we want, but very rarely we talk about getting the budget we need for the oceans that we want. And when we think about policy, I think there are a lot of gaps when it comes to the teeth of the policy, right? The enforcement, the surveillance, the monitoring, and most importantly, the implementation.
Politics can actually change things, and political will can change things. So my take-home message to you all is, if you really want to create leverage, then we need policies in place.
We're all curious now to see how that graphic recording shaped up.
If we continue the way we do, we will have a problem. We are managing the people, so we have to manage the people to change the ocean.
We have to manage the people to change the ocean. That is just one of many strong statements that we had during the core event. Another one that, listening to it again, about the basic ingredient or the main ingredient of taking action is to take action and not wait. What would you say? What was for you the key moment of this core event, Anna?
I would say just the fact that we need to take responsibility and share burden and fairness in general. I think it was Alexis that brought up empathy as an important ingredient, and I certainly agree that is important, and that's why it's important that we also meet, because that's a way to develop empathy, both for.
Yeah, but empathy now specifically from scientists and researchers, because you're used to deal with data.
That's right. And actually, I think this meeting between indigenous knowledge, for example, and science is really key. This is an example where we can really develop this kind of experience and also empathy for each other.
But this managing, you said it yourself, and it was brought up, obviously, in one way or another during those discussions during the core event, but we need to manage people in order to save and maintain the ocean. It sounds easier than it is, though.
Yes, and I think the statement of Kemal brought it up very well, saying that so many different stakeholders want a piece of the ocean, but the ocean is limited. And I think everything was said that to get forward, we need policy. So that I think that was the statement made by Isabella clearly, and she is very, very well into the topic. But it also came out that we cannot only wait for policies, it's also the personal view and the personal attitude to change habits and to make use of the ocean in a responsible way. Sustainability often is related to scientific findings, but I think the term responsibility takes it very well, because it's up to us to get forward and change also our personal behavior.
And of course, Isabella also mentioned that policymakers can make a difference where there's a political will. How do you get the political will aligned with the aims of the Ocean Decade?
Actually, I just want to mention today, I mean, a big event taking place in Stockholm that really creates a platform for this communication between science and different stakeholders and politicians. And that's the +50, Stockholm +50 conference. And we're also celebrating UNEP, the UN environmental program today. So this is just the beginning, I would say, of a focus on the ocean, but we have to also leverage all what we do in action, and that's important.
Yes, policy is important, and policy has to make sure that there is equity. So also the term equity was mentioned a lot, and I think it's important that politicians find a way to give equity to a sustainable use of the ocean.
Which also, you can also demand it as one of the showcases was very strong about when it came to the ILO and sort of fair treatment, a fair sort of framework for diving fisheries. There was lots of great examples. But to come back to this final discussion that we had for the core event, because there we had a graphic recording artist also basically putting the content of the discussion into an image. We just saw it very briefly during the summary, but here it is again, and it is so rich in messages that it picked up. Which one of those would you say reflects the discussion, but also the topic of a productive ocean best?
Well, first of all, as a scientist, you don't very often get in touch with an artistic kind of translation of what is said. And I think that's an excellent example where even science and art harmonize within Ocean Decade Laboratory. I think this graphic recording goes even almost beyond what we discussed as a productive ocean. It also takes the cleanness of the ocean, the accessibility all into account, and shows it very, very well that we have to we have to use the ocean. It is important for so many of us and also for the future generations. But the terms responsibility and also, of course, sustainability are the key ones for many people and also for the artist in this drawing.
Now, it clearly illustrates the complexity of the topic, Anna, right?
It certainly does, and also the invisible values. I mean, we talk about food, we talk about energy, we talk about materials, but also the beauty of the ecosystem. There are other values that we also need to focus on. I think Shakuntala put it really good in the core event, that we should focus on this as well.
Exactly. And of course, we just have time very briefly perhaps to look at the result of that word cloud, because I would like to point out that throughout the whole Ocean Decade Laboratory, we always tried to engage you as much as possible. And this time we gave you the opportunity to create a word cloud. What is a productive ocean for you? And the majority wrote sustainable, But there are also very interesting other sort of smaller associations. I particularly like Thankful or Giving Back. There you have your empathy, Anna.
Yes, indeed. I'm happy.
And it's changed slightly since we last looked at it. Anything particularly striking for you there, Reinhold, or are you just happy with it?
Well, I'm happy with it. I mean, it shows the diversity of thinking when people just have the chance to give one word. But outstanding, of course, is the term sustainability. And I think this is what also reflects the discussions in this core event.
Exactly. Well, then, for the time being, I would like to thank you. Obviously, you're still here with us. But talking of interaction, we also sent you an email on Monday, so the day before the core event, to ask you to participate in a survey that we want to present to you now, or at least the results of which. So a big thank you at this point for all of you who have participated in this survey that was looking at 3 particular topics, namely balancing trade-offs in protection and use of marine ecosystems, ocean sustainability throughout the value chains, and deep seabed mining. And we're now going to reveal the results of that survey. So it's time now for the reports of that engagement question, or several engagement questions. And the first one will be balancing trade-offs in protection and use of marine ecosystems. And for that report, we look forward to welcome Dr. John Schmidt, who, of course, is chair of the Science Committee of the International Council for the Exploration of the Sea in Copenhagen, Denmark. And everyone who has been following the Ocean Decade Laboratory will have a déjà vu moment now, because you will say, I've seen this guy before. Jörn, it's a very good to have you back for this wrap-up as well. And now, of course, we look forward to your report on the issue of balancing trade-offs in protection and use of marine ecosystems. Jörn, over to you.
Thank you very much, Monica. And indeed, I had a couple of déjà vu moments myself, and it's always weird to see yourself in, for example, the summary video. So again, also from my side, thank you very much to everyone who responded to the survey. And just to very briefly get you into the mood of the first topic, we asked you 3 questions on balancing protection and sustainable use of marine ecosystems. And there was a little bit of information behind that. And I think we heard throughout the whole event that there are, of course, many different actors that want to use the ocean in one or the other way. And those are related to the direct use of resources, but they are also, related to using the ocean, for well-being, for cultural reasons and others. So we were interested in your key values. So what are the key values that you actually relate to the ocean? And so when we go to the next slide, we see, and I tried to summarize them and try to make them or give the overarching responses that you gave. And not surprisingly, a lot of those have been heard already. You answered biodiversity, food, climate regulation, cultural values, but you also answered intrinsic values, livelihoods, economic potential in general, and non-living resources. And we'll hear a little bit about non-living resources later on. But what was really interesting was that there was one comment in particular that I wanted to pick out on the next slide, and that is that there was a question if we can actually ask about key values, or is the idea of giving value to the ocean not in itself very anthropocentric? And that is an interesting one, because as humans, we, of course, tend to be anthropocentric in a way. So I think that was really interesting, and I think it really nicely reflected the overall input that we have received throughout the whole event, and also I think partly in the side events. So the next question then is that we ask you, okay, so when we have different uses of the ocean, and we want to try and finding a balance, among or between all these different uses. So to the next slide, what knowledge is actually currently missing to allow an integrated ecosystem assessment of the ocean, to have an integrated understanding of the ocean, to be able to identify what are the effects of different activities that are acting in the ocean. And on the next slide, you answered, again, maybe not very surprisingly, a lot of things that we already heard. A lot of the answers stressed the need to include traditional and local knowledge and indigenous knowledge. They very much stressed that we need to understand more about the interaction of various stress factors, like understanding cumulative effects. Then there were also answers very specifically on, for example, anthropogenic noise, but then again broader on the inclusion of social science and humanities to really understand the marine system as a social ecological system. And then also being able to collect data and integrate the data across the different disciplines and including the knowledge that has been mentioned before. But beyond the knowledge, they already hinted to some maybe building blocks, like the governance that we need to have in place, and of course the funding that we need to have in place. And we heard about the budget we need for the ocean we want, and I think that was a very good catchphrase. So in the next question, we actually then try to get a picture about what are the main building blocks to really implement an ecosystem approach to management. And we heard before in the summary video, to be able to balance different stakeholder activities and the needs and the objectives of different stakeholders, you need to have a really ecosystem approach to management. So on the next slide, we'll see that a lot of that, again, reflects the general input that we already received, not only in this laboratory, but also in other laboratories. So it was a lot about, we need more cooperation, we need more communication, we need more ocean governance, or we need maybe a different ocean governance. We need political commitment, but we also need, on a local level, community engagement. And we need to bring all the different sectors together to be able to understand, to have the communication also among the different users, and then use that input to understand what kind of knowledge do we actually need to inform then the decision making. And then very clearly holistic thinking, ocean literacy, and innovation. I think that is something that is clearly being pointed out. We want to go beyond where we are right now. We need to go beyond business as usual. And for that, we do need to think outside the box, and we need innovation. So I think that was a very nice summary of the whole event in a way, and I was really happy to go through the responses that you provided. So thank you very much, Monica, and I'm handing it back to you.
Thank you, Jörn. I have 40 seconds. I would like to ask one quick question. Was there any result that really surprised you, that you didn't see coming?
Well, actually, no. I think the only really surprising one, well, maybe not necessarily surprising, but the outstanding one was really the first key point about, can we ask about values when the idea of value is so anthropocentric? But I think we are the ones that need to manage our own activities. And so I think it's perfectly fine to be anthropocentric.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jörn. As I mentioned, it was great to have you with us this time and the times before. Thank you. Well, we have another topic, two more topics that we would like to look at. The next one is a report on ocean sustainability throughout the value chains. And for that, I would like to welcome now Michelle Quesada da Silva. She's an international consultant on marine spatial planning, working with IOC-UNESCO, and there she is already. So Michelle, we are very curious to hear the results of that particular topic.
Thank you, Monica, for introducing myself. Hello to everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here to present your opinion about the ocean sustainability throughout the value chain. So if I can see the next slide, please. So our first question to the audience was, what are the key issues of the value chain of the maritime sector you are most familiar with that need to be considered in order to improve the sustainability of this sector? So let's see the answers. As you can see, we received information from different sectors. And for fisheries, for example, the key issues that were mentioned was the harmful fisheries subsidies, the non-sustainable demand, bycatch waste, ghost gear, like this lost gear that you can see in the picture of the turtle. For aquaculture, it was mentioned fertilizers, contamination and disease vector risks. For tourism, someone mentioned fashion trends demand for certain kind of seafood, which does not go in line with sustainable goals. So sometimes tourists request seafood that it's not the best season to eat them. And in relation to oil and gas, it was mentioned the drill cuttings disposal and the gas flaring. For those that are not familiar with this sector, so in this image of the oil and gas platform, you see this fire. So this is the natural gas that it's burned when you are extracting the oil, and it's sometimes a waste. We are not using this resource. Regarding deep sea mining, well, it's the unknown potential impacts, the key issue according to the audience, and we receive answers more general that are for all the maritime sectors, such as the energy use, the plastic pollution, security, fossil fuel emissions of vessels. Most of the maritime activities rely on supply vessels. Another one that I would like to mention is the decommissioning. So in this picture that you can see on the right of this old boat, so what to do with the infrastructure when we will not use it anymore, how to recycle it properly, and the lack of common fair codes of conduct, lack of equity, among others. Next question. So the second question was, which of the issues do you think require new science, technology, and investment to become more sustainable? The answers. So according to the audience, for fisheries, what we need is alternative, less damaging food production and consumption. We also need to reduce bycatch, for aquaculture to reduce fertilizers, for oil and gas and exploitation aiming at less environmental damage. For deep sea mining, we need to improve monitoring. We need better low-impact methods. And in general, for all sectors, it's important to have alternative energy supplies, reduce emission of vessels, among others. But I would like to mention some quotes. So next slide. So someone said, analysis of the value chain is complicated. Indeed, it is. And need interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research to find sustainable solutions. Another interesting quote is, investment is needed in the local, artisanal sector, but not to gentrify it or to make it trendy, but to enhance the development of more friendly activities. And the last block with the 3 quotes selected goes actually beyond the new science. So for some people, what is basically needed is to decrease consumption and rethink production. For other, my view is to start with bridging the gap between private and public sector. Doesn't need new science. I think we still need science, but it's true that we need to improve this gap. And last, solutions already exist in many cases, but implementation is uneven or missing. That is something that it was also mentioned in the core event. Last question. So which of the issues do you think are usually neglected by the sector and unknown to the wider public in your country, and therefore need more visibility to improve awareness and action? Let's see the answers. So regarding fisheries, people need to be more aware about illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Aquaculture, awareness about the risk to the natural system. Tourism, better education in consumption and production. And oil and gas, the same issue again, awareness about the gas flaring. Deep sea mining, we will hear more in the next, so I'll skip this. And then a new sector up here, that it's towards the ports. And in this case, The person mentioned that new ports sometimes affect local communities that depend on the livelihoods of the coastal ecosystems. To finalize these two quotes, they're very interesting ones. It's about the lack of data sharing is invisible to the public, who generally think that scientific data is open and shared. This is true. Those working with science and policy always talk about that, but maybe our family, our friends are not aware of this issue. And last but not least, someone think that I don't see much knowledge, approach, or activities for poor people living near our oceans. From my observation in different platforms, only those from middle to high earnings are mostly reached by the information. They are the only ones who understand, they are the only ones who participate in the activities. So it's a takeaway message for us to engage more people. And that's it for my side. Thank you very much to all of you who answers the survey.
Thank you, Michelle, for the summary of this quite complex questionnaire with also equally complex answers. And I particularly like the bits with the quotes as well, and the ones about mentioning that ultimately it also comes down to us, everyone, to change our ways, which of course is the tallest order of all there is. But Michelle, thank you so much for this contribution. And as Michelle already mentioned, we have one more engagement question that was focusing on the topic of deep seabed mining. And for that, we welcome Dr. Christian Müller. He is head of the Marine Resource Exploration Sub-Department at the Federal Institute for Geosciences and Natural Resources in Hanover. Christian, good to have you with us. Deep seabed mining, another highly exciting, interesting topic, and I'm very curious to hear the results of that particular questionnaire.
Yeah, thank you very much, Monica, and hello to everybody, and thank you very much for participating in this survey. I will just start framing the topic a little bit in order to give a frame to the questionnaires shown later. So deep sea mining is not happening yet as compared to other topics addressed within this laboratory, for example, fishery, aquaculture, and tourism. This means that there is a unique chance to regulate a human activity before it is put into practice in order to prevent damage to the marine environment. The deep sea habitats are very sensitive, and our understanding and knowledge of the deep sea ecosystem still needs to be improved significantly. But also for this topic, there are two sides of the medal that needs to be looked at and balanced. It was reported in the core event on Tuesday that we need to build approximately 80 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity each year globally until 2050 to reach the 1.5 degree climate goal. In addition, we also need to build huge capacities of solar energy and electric vehicles. Considering this, the International Energy Agency, for example, calculates the demand for cobalt in 2040 to be up to 30 times higher than today, and the demand for nickel to be up to 20 times higher than today. Metals from the deep sea mining can potentially contribute to cover this increasing demand. Therefore, we need to ask and discuss the questions: where shall all the metals come from for our energy transition, and can a productive ocean contribute to these demands? Framing this controversy, I would like to come to the results of the engaging questions or statements. The first is, I am willing to lower my own standard of living to reduce the demand for primary metals and protect the terrestrial and marine environment from increasing negative impacts of industrial scale mining. On the next slide, we can see your results to these statements, and many of you are aware of the topic and agreed that lowering of standards of living is necessary to lower the demand for metals. And I selected two very interesting comments for this. The first one is this issue and the implications for people need to be openly publicized and workshopped. Public awareness and education is essential. And the second one, which I find especially interesting, is I am already reducing my consumption. but rich countries still have too high rates of waste and consumption, as well as mining expansion all over the world. So coming to the next question, which is, or the next statement, which is, I know enough about deep sea mining to form my own opinion on whether commercial deep sea mining should be allowed or prohibited. Looking at the results, we have a little more than 50% agreement that people know or find they know enough about the topic in order to make their decision. And looking at some of the selected comments, one person said, I have little knowledge of this area, but expect any deep sea mining would have to be heavily restricted and monitored on a case-by-case basis. And a second one said, this is a new field and much more needs to be learned about impacts and methods before we launch into this as a new industry. And this finally brings me to the third and last question or statement, which is scientific research on the environmental effects of deep sea mining must be urgently enhanced and results communicated with policymakers and the public to enable them to make informed decisions. And here we also again come back to the topic of the Ocean Decade for Sustainable Development. Everybody agreed to this statement, and this was, of course, expected, but there were some very interesting comments associated with this. One person said, involve public and private policymakers in the research phase, not only in the result phase. And this is something which we, of course, are going to take as a take-home message. In many projects, we are implementing this, but this can be strongly enhanced, I think. And the final comment is we urgently need more information in this topic in the ongoing transformation to a fossil-free society. And that brings me to my initial statements. We should think about where do all the metals come from that we need for our energy transition. And we need to balance land and sea productivity for this topic. Thank you very much. And giving back to you, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christian, for this presentation. Again, super interesting question. And I'm wondering, especially with the first question, where about 90% said, yes, I'd be willing to lower my standard of living, basically in order to protect our environment. I wonder how representative that is on a wider scale, because obviously the participants are all people who engage in the Ocean Decade for various reasons and are probably more likely to be willing to lower their standard. But it's good to know. So thank you so much, Christian. And again, a big thank you to Jörn and Michelle, all three of you, for presenting the results of the engagement questions, that survey that we sent out at the beginning of the week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, over the past 48 hours, a lot has happened. A lot of people were very, very busy across the globe and across different time zones, namely with our satellite activities. 12 have already taken place. One more is coming up later today. But let's just recap a couple of those that already happened. And the first satellite activity we want to review for you now was entitled Establishing Global Knowledge Networks in SmartNet, and it was hosted by NOAA, Southwest Fisheries Science Center in the US. And I'm very glad now to welcome Stephen Bolgrad, who is a supervisory research oceanographer. That's always one of those words I keep stumbling over. At NOAA Southwest Fishery Science Center at the Institute of Marine Sciences. Stephen, good to have you with us. And before I ask you maybe one or two questions, do give us an idea what that satellite activity was about, how it was received, and what it was like.
Yes, thank you very much, Monica. I think I have a few slides to go over the summary of our event. And as you mentioned, it was sponsored by SmartNet, which is an Ocean Decade endorsed program that is sponsored by two intergovernmental organizations, ICES and PICES. ICES with a regional focus in the North Atlantic and PICES in the North Pacific. What SmartNet is really seeking to do in the decade is establish a global knowledge network for ocean science by strengthening and expanding the collaboration and infrastructure and joint activities that ICES and PICES have historically done, and building in some new partner organizations as well. And so the real aim of this satellite event that we had was to provide some initial networking opportunities with potential partner organizations, stakeholders, end users, and other decade-endorsed activities that have common goals. And then ultimately, what we're aiming to do in the decade is to advance progress around a number of key themes. And this is climate variability and change, fisheries and ecosystem-based management, social, ecological, environmental systems, coastal communities and human dimensions, and of course, communications and capacity development as well. So next slide, please. Thank you. So for our event, we began with a general introduction to the UN Ocean Decade by one of our partners at the Tula Foundation, a new decade collaborative center. And really, we tried to emphasize the point that it's all about cooperation, making connections, bringing people and initiatives together to enable transformative ocean science. And so we convened a set of panelists who gave short presentations on several initiatives. We heard from two Ocean Decade endorsed programs, SmartNet, of course, and FishScore, both of which have an emphasis on the climate fisheries nexus. And then we heard a number of perspectives on local and traditional knowledge, a couple of projects that are dealing with fisheries issues in small island developing states, the Our Fish, Our Future project in the South Pacific, and the Blue Belt project in the South Atlantic. We heard about capacity sharing with least developed countries and small island developing states, as well as perspectives on early career ocean professionals in the Ocean Decade. So next slide, thank you. And so we really guided our session and the panel and the discussion around a number of key questions. So how do we build meaningful connections? So in a sense, it's kind of a network of networks that ICES and PICES is trying to do through SmartNet, knowledge networks. And then how do we connect across different spatial and temporal scales, across different themes, food production, conservation, and how can we support capacity development, sharing, and training? And then importantly, how do we improve equity in opportunities in what's really a very asymmetric seascape across countries in terms of resources? So next slide, thank you. And so, you know, we didn't come to definitive solutions on these questions, but we identified these as being sort of the guiding questions that we want to push forward as we move in the decade and try to make some progress. So there were a few activities that we did recognize as things that SmartNet can facilitate over the next few months. One is to provide training through partnerships, and this includes new partnerships that were developed over the course of our satellite event. Provide a sustained infrastructure for cooperation, which we hope SmartNet will do, and then provide exchange of knowledge on lessons learned and best practices around community-supported observation and data collection, connecting different types of knowledge systems, from academic to traditional and indigenous, and community and stakeholder engagement. And so we're really excited to get started and build some of these collaborations and partnerships within the decade. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And I'm always the terrible person who has to keep an eye on the clock, but I'm going to ask you one question after all, because this seemed to be a really very, very interesting satellite activity. And I was just wondering, with all those partnerships that you are setting up, which of course, cooperation, again, one of the key words that you mentioned there, what kind of information or technology transfer do those local communities need in order to support in that case, SmartNet's aim of a sustainable ocean management, and do they have it in place perhaps already?
Yeah, no, what really came up in our discussions was the need for equipment and tools for ocean monitoring, and not just the tools themselves, but training on how to use them, how to then access the data, and make use of the data for sustainable management. And so, providing training opportunities, scientific exchanges, capacity sharing is all part of that process.
All right. Well, Stephen, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that satellite activity with us, and all the best for SmartNet.
Thank you.
So let's review one more satellite activity. This one was entitled Ghana's Small-Scale Fisheries Sector, and it was hosted by the University of Bergen in Norway. So let's go north. And for this satellite activity, we welcome Christiana Sam. She is a fish biologist and teaching assistant at the University of Bergen. Christiana, it's very good to have you with us. Again, before I ask you one or two questions, briefly tell us, what was this satellite activity about? What was it trying to achieve, and how did you go about it?
Thank you, Monica. I would like to first say that my session was a big success, and thanks to the Ocean Decade team and my team for making it happen. Basically, we were trying to change the narrative. Why do I say so? To be able to involve the stakeholders, indigenous stakeholders that are mostly left out in these global discourses. So I'll briefly go through the agenda, and with agenda 1, we covered sustainable livelihoods in the fisheries sector. In summary, it was conveyed that the top-down management approaches are not effective. So there should be a conscious effort to facilitate or promote co-management. And on the second agenda, that was the fish supply chain. What are the challenges, and also what are the new opportunities? There were some challenges were identified, especially when it came to local processing methods of fish. And however, we realized that there could also be new opportunities when it comes to adopting new technologies. So for instance, drying of fish is a popular processing method in Ghana. When you have this nice and hot sun, yeah. So the idea was to promote the safety of fish using that particular processing method, drying. We could use fish racks, fish drying racks. It means less contact, and that could also promote safety. And lastly, with the third agenda, we covered the utilization of small fish in the food systems. Research studies have indicated that small fish consumed with bones and head has a high nutritional value, mostly than fillets. So what can be done? It means that it can be used for fortification of foods. And lastly, there is a huge potential when it comes to adopting these small fishes into the food systems and also social protection programs. An example of a prominent social protection program is the school feeding program in Ghana, and also other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. So inclusion of small fish into these school feeding programs could have a good impact and potentially also contribute to food and nutrition security. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christiana. And indeed, I do have one, perhaps even two questions, but the first one, certainly, I mean, that sounds intriguing in the importance of small fish in the greater scheme of things, if you like. Came across very well in this satellite activity, but I'm just wondering in what way is it, or was the activity certainly addressing the issue, unique compared to other activities already addressed by the Ocean Decade Challenges number 3 and 4?
Yeah, I would like to say my satellite activity was very unique. This is because there was a conscious effort to actively engage indigenous stakeholders. So we looked at stakeholders like small-scale fishers, fish processors, marketers, and also people involved in the school feeding partner programs. So they can be able to actively contribute, tell us the issues, and be involved at the start of these developmental programs.
And
thank you.
This inclusion and cooperation obviously is also something that has been discussed a lot, is very important. So thank you for doing that. Last question, just briefly, Christiana, what's next?
Yeah, that is a big question. Yeah, I would like to first answer on a personal note. I am very passionate about the science policy interface. So what is next? In regards to the satellite activity, a network of experts and stakeholders have been created, a partnership has been facilitated. I look forward to collaborating with organizations that can move this project to policies or actions that can facilitate the bottom-up approach management in the fishery sector and help move us to the Sustainable Development Goal 14, life below water, and also 2, zero hunger by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you. Big thank you, Christiana, for presenting this satellite activity, which is the last activity that we are presenting and reviewing as part of this wrap-up now. So greetings, Christiana, and again, Stephen as well, of course, for your contribution.
Thanks.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, but this already brings the wrap-up of this 7th Ocean Decade Laboratory, A Productive Ocean, to a close, but obviously not without referring one more time with the two laboratory chairs, namely Anna and Reinhold, who are here with me. So we've reviewed the core event. We listened to the results of that engagement question survey, which I thought was really, really fascinating, and just now the satellite activities. What would you say was sort of stays with you the most? Is always one of those questions, because I know it sort of pinpoints then to those very specific terms. But was there anything that surprised you, anything that you didn't see coming?
I think passionate people. I'm not surprised, perhaps, but I mean, it's so nice meeting these passionate people. And also, one thing stays with me, and that's the need of ocean literacy. Ocean literacy for the general public, ocean literacy for the industry, ocean literacy for policymakers, and that we as scientists, we really need to take care and communicate across scientific information.
Right, right. That's a very important point that we see in so many fields, and we saw it during the pandemic as well, how important it was for the experts, the virologists and so forth, to be able to communicate so that the public and the policymakers understood and implemented the right measures. Reinhold, anything surprising for you?
I can fully agree with Anna. The engagement is and the passion we saw in these contributions. This is amazing, and it's nice and it's well known. I mean, we are from a scientific community, and we know that scientists are passionate for what they do. But we saw in these contributions that now scientists really are also engaged in this science policy interface because they want to have more of their work really being implemented. And I think this is the way forward. We need to get out of our own networks. We need to get out into the real world in a way and engage with politicians, engage with young people all around the world, also on a geographic scale, but also on a scale of education, so that to bring the messages that come out from science to the world and vice versa.
Well, this was already almost the perfect bridge towards the closing of the entire laboratory series, because exactly what we've been doing over the past year was sort of discussing amongst ourselves within the community. And now we need to sort of put a needle into that bubble and go out into the world. But of course, I mean, you've been spending a lot of time preparing this particular laboratory. I don't know, it probably takes a year or even more to put it all together. And because cooperation has been mentioned so often, not only the two of you were cooperating, there were a lot of hands on deck, right?
Yeah, we really like to convey a thank you to all the people in the expert group. You have been sustainable in a way, because we have been fighting during a pandemic for waiting and actually moving this event several times. So thank you so much for your passion and your engagement. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a challenge. For me, it was a real challenge, and without Anna, I would have never made it. But it also shows that, I mean, we didn't know each other very well. Some people also in this expert group didn't know each other, and now we have a network of different disciplines that we can build on. And I think this is something that we also in our scientific community want to do. And we hope also with the engagement of the ministries and the funders that this can build up and can be sustainable in a way. So the sustainability of these networks is the most important thing for the sustainability of the ocean decade.
Absolutely. And it's so nice, I mean, listening to you. So this was not just one of those exercises that one does. There were also learnings for you and hopefully for everyone out there, also for the speakers. It was very, very good to have you, Reinhold and Anna, as chairs of this 7th Ocean Decade Laboratory, A Productive Ocean. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Monica, and also the production team here and also the ministry who facilitated all this, especially also the production team, which did an excellent job.
Yes.
And last but not least, you, Monica, who made an excellent job also in presenting all this.
Thank you, Reinhold, and thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
And of course, just like with all the Ocean Decade laboratories, for this one also, all the documents, if made available by the speakers, by the experts, will be uploaded on the Ocean Decade website shortly. The same goes for all the videos of the core event and of this wrap-up, which you will soon be able to find on the Ocean Decade YouTube channel. And don't forget, this isn't over yet. We have, of this Ocean Decade laboratory, still one satellite activity coming up. It takes us to New Zealand, actually, and it's called Indigenous-Led Ocean Science Collaboration, and it will start at 11 p.m. Central European summertime. So just in case you need to Google and look up what the time difference then is. Well, ladies and gentlemen, from the first high-level event in June 2021 to 7 Ocean Decade laboratories stretching over the past 11, now almost 12 months, we now come to the conclusion of the series of events, which was hosted by the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research in partnership with the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, in short, the IOC-UNESCO. And of course, we cannot wrap up this entire series without having the host of this series speak to us again, and I'm very happy to bring in now the IOC-UNESCO Secretary General, Vladimir Rabinin. Vladimir, good to see you. We're approaching the end, not just yet, but we're soon there.
Monica, first of all, thank you. That was It was a heartwarming experience for all of us to work with you, to work with the Federal Ministry for Education and Research. And you just alluded to the fact that this is a series of laboratories that is finishing. I have to say that, this brings me back to the 2016, beginning of the year, when we first invented the idea of the decade, and we felt that it is needed. Then in 2017, we supplied our idea to United Nations. Then in 2018, we started to work on the plan. We supplied our ideas and the plan to the United Nations in 2020. In 2021, we started the decade, so it's middle 2022. Things go up, they come and go. Good things finish, but the outcomes, they accumulate. And I would like to say that, this the decade is about co-design, and there is a lot of wisdom. There is a lot of passion that was mentioned by Anna and Reinhold. So, with that passion, with that wisdom, with that community, we can really move forward and achieve the 7 qualities of the ocean. That will be clean, productive, resilient, and most importantly, inspiring and engaging. So, there is in the decade, something that would be working in isolation. When we speak about pollution, we also speak about ecosystems. In order to manage ecosystems, we need to have more observations. We have to turn observations into data. We have to make sure that ocean literacy helps decision makers to understand what it means. So that is why the decade has to be co-designed and has to embrace so many people. And I think this series of laboratories, including the Productive Ocean Laboratory, which is kind of a culmination because we would like to keep the ocean productive, was very, very instrumental in this. With this, I would like to thank actually those people who designed those laboratories. There was a lot of talent there and also a lot of professionalism. And, this comes and goes, but, there is one rule in the decade, and also that rule applies in IOC. We always start like, professionals, we start like working together as partners, but we finish as friends. And that friendship stays longer than our projects, and that is what keeps us going. And I hope very much that we are going to have a wonderful conclusion, and that is not the end, but the start of the new period. Thank you, Monica.
Well, thank you, Vladimir. And what you say already, this is not the end. The ocean decade ends in 2030, so we still have roughly 8.5 years to roll up our sleeves, join forces, and join the expertise, of course, and try and also convince everybody outside, as we've just also heard from Anna and Reinhold, that we have to communicate to the outside world, get into the real world in order to get the message across. Because to restore the ocean's health, develop what the aim is, a path to more sustainable coexistence between us humans and the ocean, we need to keep up the efforts, improve them even, and also pass the baton on to the generation that is the one having to live with the planet and the ocean that we leave behind. Now, we are extremely lucky because the next generation is highly motivated, brilliantly educated, and more than ready to take responsibility. That certainly goes for the 2 people I'm going to introduce to you now. You can see them already, 2 early career ocean professionals, in short, ECOPs. We have environmental lawyer Angelique Popouneau, who is a policy advisor to the chair of the Alliance of Small Island States. And we have Guillermo Ortuño Crespo, a marine ecologist and postdoctoral researcher at the Stockholm Resilience Center. Both of them ECOPs, both of you supporting the IOC-UNESCO, supporting the Ocean Decade. So very good to have you here, Angelique and Guillermo. I don't know how many Ocean Decade laboratories you've been following from beginning to end, but there was a lot of expertise shared, a lot of terms like sustainability, cooperation, mentioned all over again and again, so clearly that is like a common thread. But from what you've been able to follow, Angelique, I'd like to start with you. What is the biggest takeaway? Was there something from your perspective where you say, yes, this is something that you can actually take and move on and get the job done?
No, thanks for that. And it's a real honor to be here. And I'm actually calling in from preparatory meetings in Bonn for climate change negotiations. And it's really fitting, I say, given I had an opportunity to review earlier discussions. And the thing that really stuck with me was productivity needs sustainability. It's really important for us to think about how we're ensuring that productive ocean not only means environmental sustainability, so really taking into consideration the importance of having healthy, resilient oceans to be able to, really sustainably continue to support us, continue to coexist with us in the long term. But there's another element of sustainability when we talk about productivity needs sustainability. It's not just about the environmental aspect, but also the equity aspect. Really thinking about how this productivity is one that is inclusive in nature. It's providing decent work. It is providing good living standards. And in particular, we're lucky to have the innovation coming out from young people, their brilliant ideas. And that's really inspiring. So I think the Productive Ocean really brought all the laboratories together. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelique. And I would like to know from Guillermo, perhaps, because all these things that you just summarized also, Angelique, certainly it's all been said, it all happened, but the big question is it enough? Is it enough in order to bring the ocean decade to its fruition, make it more sustainable by the year 2030? Guillermo, your thoughts on that, please.
Thank you very much, Monica. It's not enough, but it's a great start, especially given the exceptional circumstances with the COVID-19 pandemic and other events over the past 2 years. So like it was said before, it's not the end, it's not the beginning of the end, but perhaps the end of the beginning. We all know that quote. And I would like to say that just the fact that I've heard the acronym ECOP mentioned multiple times across laboratories, that's an acronym that didn't exist 24 months ago. And now I feel the Ocean Decade is fully embracing this sort of sense of duty to bring in the next generation to pass on the baton more efficiently and to not think about early career engagement as charity or tokenism, but rather as an investment. And I do see that across programs. I do see that being led from IOC-UNESCO. And I would like to thank them for the great leadership in that space. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. We have to also think beyond 2030, but I'm extremely proud of the work the Ocean Decade has achieved given the circumstances, and I think the next 8 years are just going to help us get to the sustainable future that we want.
Thank you, and with your kind words also for shaping that term ECOP and the support of the IOC-UNESCO, Vladimir, can you tell me, or rather can you tell Angelique and Guillermo representing the ECOPs, what the IOC-UNESCO and the Ocean Decade Secretariat hope to get in terms of support from this young and highly motivated generation?
I think I was younger, Monica, when we started the idea of the decade. So it was already five and a half years ago. And, I'm always surprised by the kindness of people, but also by the fact that, when we speak about the problems of the world that are related to to manifestations of the competitiveness between the individuals of our species, and that results in the multiple problems that exist in the world, including bureaucracy, including corruption and things like this. I am actually incredibly encouraged by what you said, Monica. You said professionalism, knowledge, and also, I would say, new ethics that exist in the younger generation. Let me quote from Julius Caesar that said 2,000 years ago, this generation doesn't listen to elders. They don't educate. Well, they don't obey us. They have no future. That was said 2,000 years ago. But I have to say that young generation is better than the older generation. And we really hope that you will take over, you move forward, and I certainly feel that you know probably better what we need to do than we know.
Well, Angelique and Guillermo, very encouraging words, but words that also put quite a lot of responsibility onto your shoulders. I would like to add a little question with that responsibility, because I think what also became clear, certainly in this over the last 12 months, was that the scientific community is there, full of passion, full of knowledge, full of data, which they are now certainly aware it also needs to be shared. Knowledge sharing was a big topic in the last Ocean Decade Laboratory, and all of that, I think, is widely established. But what also recurred again and again was, how do we bring that message across outside that scientific bubble? How do we talk to policymakers and make them understand and become as passionate as we are? And how do we communicate to those who have no particular connection to the ocean other than going there on holiday twice a year and probably leave a lot of pollution there? Do you have any ideas for this millennium, for the 21st century, how to go about that? Angelique, would you like to start?
That's a huge question, and I think one with many solutions. But one of the things that I think is important is really creating meaningful connection with the ocean. I think we need to start there, and people need to understand the why. So not only, going for a snorkel, but really understanding the ecosystems that you're looking at, really understanding that after you've done a beach cleanup and taken that Instagram post, you need to really not be throwing that plastic bag down, because it's not just about being seen to be sustainable, it's really about understanding the issues. So I think there's an element of the need to connect, but also then to educate and understand. But that's only part of the solution. I think we could have a whole brainstorming session on this one. Thank you.
Don't worry, Angelique. Nobody expects you to have the solution ready. That's the $1 million question almost. But you're there, and it's just my chance now to pick your brain. That also goes, of course, for Guillermo. I mean, you're at an age where one imagines you still have loads of friends around you, and you may even discuss topics like the ocean and everything that comes with it. So, Guillermo, how do you communicate it personally?
That's a good question. I think it's a matter of finding a balance between information overload and sort of the seriousness of some of the challenges that we face, but without transmitting cynicism. So I think the Ocean Decade is fantastic in that it talks about new knowledge for solutions. We're talking about, we understand the challenges, but we are putting solutions on the table. It's not the UN Decade of Ocean Science, period. It's the Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, meaning we're generating actionable knowledge that accompanies those challenges. So as we talk to ocean leaders or my family, or I chat with my friends, I think it's important to communicate how all of our lives, our economies, our societies depend on a healthy biosphere that is not doing so well, and that we are generating the knowledge to address some of these challenges. So when it comes to decision makers, I think it's taken us quite some time to convey sort of the sense that we need a healthy ocean, we need a healthy biosphere at large to support their peoples. That sort of this endless extraction of resources is not realistic, and I think that message is starting to establish its roots. So I think we just need to keep hammering this home, and I think we're seeing governments respond just in time, because we are running out of time.
I take your word, they will react just in time. Guillermo and Angelique, first of all, I'm absolutely hopeful that the Ocean Decade and its aims are in very good hands, also with the young generation, which you represent here. So thank you so much for that time. I would like to give the floor one more time to Vladimir, because all good things must come to an end. The Ocean Decade not yet. There's lots to do. But this particular series of laboratories is coming to an end. And for that, Vladimir, your final words, please.
Monica, indeed, this has been a marathon, 1 year marathon. We're going to have 10 marathons like this. And, the beauty of that marathon is that, when you run it, then you get exhausted. But, with that marathon, we're getting more and more energy. That energy comes from participants, it comes from friends, and also we understand that it is possible to achieve what we dreamed about. And we dreamed about not only creating a kind of science of the ocean, but as Guillermo said, this is science for our future life, the life of future generations. So I think this decade comes with a big strength of wisdom, of knowledge, but also with very strong moral strengths as well. And with that, we can move together, all of us. And I would like to say that, as already said, that we are acquiring friends in big numbers. I would like, because of that, thank the PMBF, the Federal Ministry for Education and Research. I would like to thank that vice organizers of the seven laboratories, also very committed. Excellent job, and and participants in the satellites events that were rotating around the world. I had vertigo when I was trying to follow all of that. That was a very positive vertigo. So with that, I think we are on the rise, and this is very important. Not also because this is a science program, but it brings together a very positive movement. People are getting better when they participate in the decade, and the decade is getting stronger. So we created something that will, I think, stay in the future. And already this is the largest ever scientific undertaking in the ocean sciences. But the beauty of that is also serving the ocean, is serving our future. For that, I would like to thank Monica, yourself, because you were cementing this work. That was amazing. Fantastic work. And the IOC is that organization that follows that rule. You can check out, but you can never leave. We will be counting on you, Monica.
That's a threat, isn't it? Thank you.
No, it's not a threat.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Take care, everyone there.
Thank you, Vladimir, for the closing of this Ocean Decade Laboratory Series, and of course also the first international conference on the UN Ocean Decade, all of which came to you from Berlin. And a big thank you at this point, perhaps, to the hosts, the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, in partnership, as we've heard many times now, with the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, IOC-UNESCO, and Vladimir there at the helm as the Secretary Executive. A big thank you to everyone who participated. That is you, and of course all those who participated in an active manner, the speakers, the chairs that we had throughout the last 12 months, the technicians behind the scenes without whom we would not be connected, as well as the editorial staff that helped also, even the scientists and the experts, to find the right content and putting it together. So we had laboratories that made sense and that helped us all to communicate the important issues. We've heard it, there is still a lot to do for the Ocean Decade. We still have 8.5 years. Let's keep the momentum, ensure that all together, by the end of the decade, we will indeed create the ocean we want. And with that, it's a big thank you from my side. Goodbye and stay safe.